sometimes, man, I think about myself and I'm shocked that I never saw this.
Right.
You know, because I've been saved and filled with the Spirit since I was like 3 years old. How did it take me all these years to figure this stuff out? Because it's written right there. Adam didn't believe those things before the fall. He believed it after the fall. After the fall, he took on the carnal mind. And he began thinking with a heart filled with the serpent's wisdom. And then all his beliefs came from the mind of the serpent. Now what we did is we took that and we preached that as if it was the truth. And we'll just use a classic example of this. I mean, Resurrection Sunday, the day we're actually all supposed to come together and talk about the life of God and how we're going to experience a life that's overcome death. And we come in and we don't preach the mind of Christ. We preach the mind of Adam. We talk about how wonderful Jesus is. That part's good. We don't put a period at the end of that. We talk about how wonderful Jesus is. And then we go into how God had to forsake Jesus so that he could accept us. No. That is the mind of Adam.
Right.
That's what Adam thought. Okay? That's what Jesus came to destroy. He came to destroy the belief that God had forsaken us. Because the belief that you're forsaken by God will cause you to think you got to clothe yourself.
Right.
And you're going to then go trying to clothe yourself with fig leaves. And so Jesus came to enter into our darkness. What was our darkness? My God, why have you forsaken me? That was our darkness. The only way we could be let out of our darkness is if Jesus came into our darkness and he could blow up our darkness from the inside out. So Jesus confesses the lie of man. When man sees somebody smitten and stricken with sin and death, do you know what they think? They're the forsaken of God. So we all looked at Jesus on the cross and we concluded he's the smitten and stricken of God. He's the forsaken of God. Jesus knows that's what's going on. And so Jesus quotes Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? Because he's talking to a people who thinks he's been forsaken by God. Then you go to Psalm 22, you read the first verse, and what we don't understand about the Jewish mind is that when they read a psalm, it's a whole psalm. It's not one verse, and then you close the book, and then another verse, and you close the book. It's a whole thought. It's the whole thought that means something. And so you start off with, my God, why have you forsaken me? And then immediately after that, he starts talking about trusting God. He starts talking about how he trusts God. Immediately after that, he starts talking about trusting God. And he starts talking about how he's been surrounded by the bulls of Bashan. Who were the bulls of Bashan? The centurions and the Pharisees that were crucifying him, telling him that he was forsaken by God. The Pharisees told him he was forsaken by God. Will we now say they were filled with the Spirit?
No.
Okay, so if the Pharisees believed Jesus was forsaken by God, and Jesus said they were of their father the devil, where do we think that belief came from? Their father the devil.
Bingo.
Why would they want to tell Jesus that? Because Satan was trying to tempt Jesus to give himself life. He was trying to tempt Jesus to come down off the cross and prove he was the Son. Come down off the cross and clothe yourself if you're the Son. He was trying to tempt him. He knew that if Jesus would believe he was forsaken by God, he would do the same thing the first Adam did.
Right.
Jesus is the last Adam. He had to come and do something different than the first Adam. The first Adam believed he was forsaken. He started clothing himself. The last Adam comes. He stands in the face of the accusation that he was forsaken. And do you know what he says? God hath not abhorred me in my affliction. He has not hid his face from me, but he hears me when I cry unto him. My flesh rests in the hope that God will not suffer me to see corruption. He will not leave my soul in Hades.
Amen.
That's what was in the heart of Jesus. Keep reading Psalm 22. You get down to around verse 24, and that's what comes out of his mouth. And then we see the confirmation of that because Jesus, right before he gives up the ghost, which means he turns his back on the life the world can give him, he turns his back on the life that the world has, he says, Father, into your hands I commit my life. See? That's what Jesus believed. You see, and he did that so we could find our lives no longer born from the carnal mind, but we could find our lives born from the mind of Christ. Because the mind of Christ will put you to rest in God. It ain't, the mind of Christ doesn't say you must trust God. The mind of Christ dwells in you and brings forth trust in you. God didn't come to Jesus when he hung on the cross and said, listen, man, just trust me. God gave birth to something inside of Jesus through the Holy Spirit that animated Jesus' thoughts with who God is as Abba and what God thinks about him and what God promised him, which is that he would not abhor him in his affliction, that he would not hide his face from him, that he would not suffer him to see corruption, he would not leave his soul in sorrow and death, but he would hear him when he cried, and he would redeem him. You see, that's what was in Jesus. And when you think like that about God, when you're in the midst of all sin and death, your flesh goes to rest in the certainty that God is with you and nothing can separate you from God or his life or his love for you.